DayZ has been a project covered in bad blood from the get-go, launching in a poor state, the main man leaving, a dwindling player base, all the meanwhile on the brink of cancellation. Sacrifices were made and 1.0 rushed through the door. DayZ has since 2018 been in a state of complete incompleteness, stuck between two engines. A plausible leak out of nowhere then unveiled DayZ 2, powered by the latest technology, cross-platform console mods and unbelievable graphics, and at the very same moment announced its cancellation. The Norway leak is the story of a sequel with enough twists and turns that I'm just certain there's something to it. So, since 2018 there have been numerous mentions of DayZ 2, most of them insubstantial, but there are certain clues found that allude to either active development or at the very least pre-production. And one unsuspecting leak, still unconfirmed, alleged that DayZ 2 existed but was cancelled. It all originated from this leaked screenshot posted in 2020, nicknamed the Norway leak, where the general consensus was that it was part of a new Bohemia development. The screenshot was an in-game or in-engine screen grab of a terrain in early development, not just promo art as some claim. It depicts or draws inspiration from Atlanterhavsveien, a famous tourist hotspot in Norway that stretches 8 kilometers across an archipelago of small islands. As unexpectedly as the leak surfaced, as quickly did it fade into obscurity, and not much was heard from it since. However, a Reddit thread looping back to the leak 5 years later debunked the whole thing as a landscape created for Bohemia's extraction shooter called Vigor, coincidentally set in Norway. Comments under the same thread wrote off the leak as something related to Vigor and called it a day, but I wasn't ready to write it off just yet. So, Vigor has 14 maps, and recently one of them should feature the landscape depicted in the screenshot with the 2 bridges. Going through the map layouts and gameplay videos of each map, I couldn't find a definitive answer. Maybe it's part of a map but that's a non-playable area, scenic backdrop, or it was part of a map that was never released. Just you watching my videos is well enough, but I am also on the long road to 1000 subs, consider subscribing because this is just the start of the DayZ content. Anyways, as a final Hail Mary, I posted a screenshot on Vigor's official subreddit. If the screenshot is from within Vigor, they would know it. The thread stayed relatively quiet despite thousands of impressions. One user with hundreds of interactions in just the Vigor subreddit alone claimed with confidence that the terrain is not part of Vigor in any way, shape or form. However, it did remind him of a map called Örn. The map matches the climate, a cold hilly region with snow-capped mountains, and its main characteristic is an archipelago-like layout, matching the small islands seen in the screenshot. At this point, I struck out. I couldn't find a one-to-one comparison between the screenshot and the Örn map, or any other in-game map. But the Vigor theory wasn't far-fetched, it might have just never made it into the game. In the interest of due diligence, I retraced my steps and came across the original post that shared the Norway screenshot and rediscovered the tweets and exchanges around it. The original leaker Biosphere, a known and largely accurate leaker of Bohemia games, has since been right about the release of Armory Forger with surprising detail, more than a year before its official announcement. He's also been right about the Tencent investment, among other things. Biosphere didn't just post one screenshot of the mysterious terrain, he posted another. Similar climate to the first, most certainly the same terrain, but this time taken on top of a mountain where snow covers the ground. With a few more assets in this one, I wanted to try and compare assets. If any of them are also found in other Bohemia titles, we can at least conclude it's a Bohemia development, as the leak suggests. I used the barren trees, snow-covered trees, and the one green bush in the second screenshot as reference and scoured through DayZ, Vigor, and Armory Forger to find a match. While some assets resemble the references, it was never a perfect match. I could not with confidence tie the leak to Bohemia. The 2 screenshots depicting this unreleased terrain are just a footnote in the larger DayZ 2 leak published by Biosphere that supposedly started development back in 2019, built from the ground up with the now complete Enfusion engine. It's more described as an incremental upgrade rather than a fundamental one where PvE is brought to the forefront with zombie animals, zombie hordes, and this is just me guessing, system like those introduced in Sakal with extreme cold, influenza and heavy metal poisoning. The biggest difference was its location, taking place in Norway as opposed to the fictional Cherno Russian region. The thematic departure makes sense, assets could be shared to a greater extent between Vigor and DayZ. The other big difference, this time behind the scenes, was that DayZ 2 was supposedly led by Bohemia Bratislava, taking over the reign from the Prague office that gave us DayZ in the first place. Biosphere motivated this detail by the fact that the development of the original had been such a mess, probably hurting the team's reputation in the process. Interestingly enough, the same team tasked with DayZ 2 was shut down just a year later. In an attempt to corroborate Biosphere's DayZ 2, I looked at the closing of Bohemia Bratislava and the articles surrounding it. In a comment from Bohemia to Games Industry, they confirmed that 40 employees were affected, a sizable crew. More interestingly, they mentioned that the Bratislava studio had transitioned off assisting with DayZ, the original, somewhere between early 2019 and late 2020. Roughly lining up with Biosphere's claim that DayZ 2 development started in early 2019. What contradicts Biosphere's recollection of events was that Bohemia Bratislava was also behind DayZ's Battle Royale mode called Survivor Games, not to be confused with the now defunct community-run event. Although Survivor Games was more of a pilot project than anything else.
Wow, that was so much fun.
The most notable changes came in the shape of a simplified health system represented by a single health bar, health items restore straight health, vests are part of a tier system, the ever-closing circle of gas now synonymous with BRs was replaced with a sector system just like the old Survivor Games events. The mode was shut down quickly after its release, but that's not the main takeaway. No way that 40 employees, even 10 employees, worked full-time on Survivor Games. What went on in that office besides its lackluster Battle Royale mode? They must have worked on something else. That something else is a gap in Biosphere's otherwise straight record of accurate leaks. What speaks against Biosphere is that the Norway leak stands out in a way that contradicts a connection to Bohemia. On his Twitter, he has posted 11 in-game or in-engine screenshots to date, all of them but 2 have been taken down. Can you guess which 2? Yep, the Norway leak. Well, maybe Bohemia wouldn't take down material related to a cancelled project. True, but they did take down these 2 screenshots of a cancelled Arma 3 terrain of all things. As the Norway leak lost its little momentum it had as Biosphere seemingly left the scene, there were a few very quiet years ahead. Then came Microsoft's acquisition of Activision. During the acquisition itself, specifically in 2023, a ton of internal documents were made public. One of them seemingly a profile of Bohemia including a company overview, shipped games and current projects. What is of interest to us is that DayZ 2 is listed as under development. You would have to take this with a fistful of salt though, as this is Microsoft's assessment of Bohemia from an acquisition perspective. They probably do not know the inner workings of the company, let alone development. Fast forward a year to October 2024 and Bohemia flew out a bunch of DayZ creators to introduce the upcoming expansion, DayZ Frostline. There isn't much of interest from the trip itself, but alongside the marketing of Frostline, the same creators were emailed a document answering commonly asked questions. The content of that document has since been posted on the official forums. One of those questions pertained to the development of DayZ 2, of which Bohemia fully denied. Same as the time leading up to the Frostline release, Bohemia flew out content creators again to get a glimpse of DayZ Badlands before anyone else. Upon returning home, the DayZ streamer The Running Man C made some interesting remarks about his trip, specifically what he saw walking through Bohemia's offices. First mentioning the increased team size, then mentioning the unspoken feeling felt around Bohemia's workplace and employees. Something more was going on, more than they were willing to speak about.
I don't know the exact number, but there's between 30 and 50 DayZ devs working on the game now. 2 years ago, there was nowhere near that many, there's been way more people employed for the game. Maybe they're working on other things on top of this, who the hell knows?
That observation could easily be corroborated by looking at Bohemia's job listings featuring many open positions for not DayZ, but the DayZ series, specifically referring to an on-and-ons game in its description. Take the description with a grain of salt though. Considering the sheer number of job listings, there ought to be more than meets the eye. The Running Man C might just be onto something we just don't know for certain. Nothing has been confirmed and we will probably not hear a peep about DayZ 2 until after Arma 4, which is coming in 2027. There was another leak that surfaced in 2021 breaking down the main revenue streams by a game-to-game basis where clearly DayZ is carrying Bohemia hard, standing for 65% of the incoming revenue. Something ought to be in the pipeline. From a financial point of view, DayZ 2 is all but confirmed.